So I'm just going to clarify a little bit what is the hierarchy so that we know exactly where we're standing and what we're transitioning into. The fact that you're here studying the mastery model means that you are ready to let go of the old religious saviorship type of model and to go into a more sovereign type of path for your journey. The hierarchy is a planetary organization. It's a local organization. It's specific to this planet. It's got nothing to do with the galactic or universal level. It's just for this planet. And it's a group of beings and people, not all of them embodied, but a bunch of them embodied, obviously, that have worked for a long time to try to guide humanity towards a higher future, towards spiritual growth, really. The hierarchy was established a long time ago after things went really wrong on this planet, around the time of Atlantis, when there was what we call the fall, where, let's say, evolution on this planet got tampered with in a way that was probably unwise. Not necessarily with bad intentions, but just certain beings who were in charge of things here just decided that things were not going fast enough. And so they kind of tampered with things a little bit. And a lot of consequences ensued from all of that, which meant that things got really out of whack on the planet. A lot of the beings that were here guiding evolution and higher beings lost the plot. There was a bit of a split between the light and the dark. So those that lost the plot and that, perceived that maybe the learning should be done through fear and suffering, and then those that thought it was all about light and love and so on. And the hierarchy, the light hierarchy, is really what was the ones who thought it was all about the light and love, and the dark lodge is those that felt that learning for humanity in terms of growth needed to happen through pain and suffering. So, both of them, the dark lodge and the light hierarchy, really tried to help humanity evolve towards higher goal and higher states of being. They just had different ways of going about it, and there's no right or wrong, it's just how it is. There are some in this group that have been involved with one or both, or one or the other. We're coming to an age now where it's really not about the polarity between light and dark. It's not about one's good and one's evil. It's really about synthesis, about bringing things into a state of unity and oneness and harmony, where all the different aspects and sides can contribute something so that a higher good is found for all. And that's what harmony is about, really. So we're coming to an age where that polarization between light and dark is becoming really kind of so last age. It's becoming a bit passé and a bit irrelevant for the new energies and the new age that we're moving into. So we really have to work even within ourselves to reconcile this whole good and bad, pleasure and pain thing, and just to realize it's all just energy at different levels of vibrations and different expressions. There is no right and wrong, there's only choice and consequences. So the hierarchy was established then to help get things back on track after everything went, wrong, so to speak. So where everything got a little bit messy and humanity's consciousness kind of, dropped, the hierarchy were really trying to get things back on track. And you know what? They've done some great work. They've really, tried to find ways to help humanity evolve. And just over thousands and thousands and thousands of years, they've really tried to follow through with their mission. And one of the ways that they finally adopted to do this was that saviorship model. So that saviorship model is about shepherding. They considered that humanity were not ready yet to stand in their sovereignty and own their own power and their own relationship with Source. So what they did is kind of place themselves as an intermediary between Source and humanity to help guide humanity to a point where they would be ready to then step up to the next level, to start developing their own relationship with God and the universe and Source. So, all wonderful, really. And I'd like you to also remember that as we work through this process of transitioning and letting go of the hierarchy to move more into alignment with the mastery model, that it's not about judging the hierarchy or seeing them as bad. It's really about just realizing it's just that it's time for you guys to move on to the next thing. There's a lot of wonderful, wonderful soul and wonderful beings in the hierarchy. And there are some that may be stuck in their ways a little bit. They're not necessarily evolving with the energies that are now shifting into the age of Aquarius, which is all about synthesis and more sovereignty. There's a lot of souls and beings in the hierarchy that haven't incarnated for a long, long time. Like they haven't actually had an embodiment experience here in the real world for thousands of years, some of them. So they're a little bit out of touch. I was very heavily involved with the hierarchy for quite some time. I worked myself into quite a good position in the hierarchy. I worked really hard over many centuries, a long time ago, to really get myself to a place in the hierarchy where I could embody a certain ideal, where I could be in a certain position, where I could, be recognized within that organization, so I could really serve and make a difference in the world and carry out the mission. And I really, really believed in that. And it's important for you all to remember that time where you really wanted to be part of the hierarchy, or you really enjoyed being part of that whole organization and group that was there to serve humanity and make a difference, because it's important to remember the good times as well as the more difficult times. So I worked really hard to get myself in a certain position, and it was wonderful for a while. And then over the last maybe 500-600 years, even though I was still very devoted and dedicated to the work of the hierarchy, I started to really struggle a little bit with it, simply because I was starting to get the impacts from the work that I was doing with the hierarchy. I really started to see how several factions in the hierarchy, because there's different groups in the hierarchy, then there's all these different factions and subgroups within the hierarchy, and I really started to see how some of them were really, really stuck in their ways and were starting to do the opposite of what they had set out to do at the beginning. And in my own way, I was trying to make things change, to put forward propositions, to try to bring forward ideas that would maybe start to change this, help them start to be more involved, because the more we went along, the more things were getting really, really stuck, and the less they were being actively involved. It's all about endless meetings and talking about stuff, but by the time they decide to do anything, it's too late. And so I really, in my own way, started to kind of bring propositions to the table, and they got smashed down time and time again. And I started to get quite frustrated with it, just trying to get people to go, but can't you see, we need to start taking action, we need to start doing something. Unfortunately, the really stuck elements of the hierarchy that are really involved in decision making just really smashed that down time and time again. There was times where I found some that were really like, oh yeah, let's do that. That sounds like a great idea. And it was often more like newer ones to the hierarchy, ones that had just worked themselves into levels where they could be involved in certain meetings or make decisions, and they had more of that sense of newness and wonder and innocence about things, and that sense of idealism of wanting to make a difference. And those those kind of souls were often like, oh yeah, let's do that, that sounds good. But then some of the more senior ones would come in and go, no. So over time I got really disillusioned with the hierarchy, and so I started making my transition, and that's just really recent. That's only been over the last few years, really, where I've just gone, okay, I need to break off this. Obviously, what is offered here with the mastery model, it's nothing new for me. It's something that I embraced a long time ago. That's how I achieved certain levels of actualization a long, long time ago through the mastery model. I didn't do it through the saviorship model. But after that, I got involved with the hierarchy. And now it was like, wow, it's time to return to my roots, so to speak, and to embrace this newer way, which is more about empowerment of individual souls rather than doing it in the shepherding way. So, and that was not an easy transition. And some of you might, have gone through this recently, or start to go through it, or will go through it very shortly, where they're not always very happy to let you go. And it depends how attached they are to you or what role you fulfilled in the hierarchy, but they can really quite come in pretty heavily to try to keep you there, keep you in the fold. Unfortunately, a lot of them perceive that what we're doing is the enemy of what they're doing, and it's not the case. What we're doing caters to different needs and a different crowd to some level. A lot of people need the model of the hierarchy because they are not ready to embrace their own direct relationship with Source. They're not ready to perceive that they have the God within that's sovereign and wonderful. They're not quite ready for this. So these people, they need that model of shepherding. So a lot of people are not ready for this. So the hierarchy has its role to play up to a certain point. And then what happens is that people outgrow what the hierarchy can give them, which is what is the case for you guys. You're just to the point where what the hierarchy can give you, you've outgrown it. So it's like when you finish primary school, it's time to move on to high school or middle school or whatever you call it. So it's the same with the hierarchy. They're not, you know, doing something bad and we're doing something good or vice versa. It's just we catering to different needs. And there are some souls that just don't really work well with the shepherding model. And some of you have experienced that and have been somewhat damaged by your experience with the hierarchy because you just didn't make it for a very good sheep. So we need to really kind of level the perception that we have of the hierarchy and this tradition and all of this to see that it's not counter to each other. They're just fulfilling different needs and different purpose that are all there and all need to be catered for. However, what happens when you stay in the hierarchy past the point where it's able to serve your needs is it can be quite damaging. And I experienced that myself, where I was in the hierarchy way past the point where I was really growing from anything that they could offer for me. I was more doing it to serve through the hierarchy. But the martyr thing is, they love the martyr thing. And I made for a really good martyr for a while, you know, really like, yeah, I'll go and martyr myself, no problem. And obviously when you do that enough times, that can be a bit damaging. Also, because the hierarchy has these very clear ideas of the boxes that you should fit in and the ideals you have to embody. Like one of my jobs was to embody a particular ideal. Unfortunately, that ideal was not necessarily the healthier or the most whole ideal that one can embody. And that means that I had to kind of repress certain aspects of my being in order to fit within the ideal that they were promoting for, you know, different souls, for women, for men, for whatever. And that was quite damaging, because when you repress something for, you know, 2,000 or 3,000 years, it starts to really have a bit of an impact on you and your energy. And unfortunately, there's a lot of judgment and the shame and the guilt, all of that works within the hierarchy, which is why it's so present within religions, is because they use those mechanisms to try to get people to fit the mold or to work through the issues or to fit within the pack of sheep. And so there can be quite a lot of these energies, the shame, the guilt, and the judgment that can enter into yourself, where you feel you have to judge or be ashamed or be guilty of certain aspects of yourself, of your energy or things you've done, because it doesn't fit within the model of the hierarchy. And that's, again, is something that I've encountered a lot with people I've worked with, where you're still really stuck in trying to please the idea of perfection that has been promoted to you for many, many centuries. We've had, you know, obviously the ideal that's promoted for women by the hierarchy needs a lot of work. You either like those of you who have done the goddess course are a bit familiar with this. There's the whole virginal, you know. It's kind of what I did. Not good. And then, or there's, you know, then you're the harlot, you're the whore, you know, because if you're a bit freer with your energy and, you know, your beingness and just express yourself more freely for a woman, and straight away that, whoa, that doesn't fit with the little sheep box that women need to be in even more than men. So there's a lot of repression, a lot of judgment that comes from that. And unfortunately, I've worked with different people who still unconsciously try to become the spiritual ideal of that. Now, for men, it's also a different thing. It's a whole... there's a lot of kind of macho stuff in the hierarchy. There really is. In a way, if you're expressing more as a female energy, female soul, it's very hard to be taken seriously. And there's a lot of the ones in power in the hierarchy express more masculine, in a masculine way. And there's this whole thing of like, yeah, you know, the masculine energy is superior. It's more able to lead. It's more, you know, it should be the one wielding power because, you know, the female energy is not meant to be wielding power. And there's some truth in that to some degree. You know, the power, pure power is more of a masculine quality than a feminine quality. But when you take it down to the level of souls, and we all souls here, there needs to be a balance of both energies. And the fact that you're a masculine soul, expressing more as a masculine soul or a masculine being, doesn't mean necessarily that you're really in balance with your expression of power or more capable in your expression of power, and that has proven right when we've seen the abuse of powers that have been carried out. So yeah, for boys there's been a lot of distortion around that superiority, inferiority, as long as you fit it within the mold, and if you don't, it can be quite violent, the rejection that male souls you know, experience where they don't fit within the mold of what's expected of them. You know, they can be turned straight away into the bad guy, the evil guy. You know, if you're not an angel, then you've got to be a demon, or you've got to be the devil incarnate. And straight away there's like a making it into a bad thing. That can happen in lots of different ways, but that's kind of what's happened. And that's why we need to take some time this morning to really feel into the impacts that we have incurred from the hierarchy, and also really feel into where we have attachments and identification still, where we're still trying to be the good little boy or the good little girl that the hierarchy expects us to be. In a way, it's like when you're a child, you want to please mom and dad. You want to be the good little boy, the good little girl that mom and dad want you to be. And to some degree that serves a purpose, you know, because you need to want to please your parents to be able to follow their guidance, to find, you know, to learn what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, to learn about boundaries, to learn about what's, you know, kindness compared to meanness. And the only way that a little one can learn this, when they don't have yet the capacity to discern right and wrong and, you know, good and bad, so to speak, is to just gauge by what their parents are teaching them and the reactions from their parents. So you want your parents' approval, because you need that to feel good about yourself. And that mechanism is then used for your parents to go, oh, I don't approve of this because you've been very naughty, you've been slapping your sister. That's not okay. So that you don't get approval for that. Or yes, you get approval because you've done really well at school or whatever. So that's the guidance system for children. So we also have to not judge the fact that we sought approval from our parents as children, because that's very appropriate to some degree with discernment when we're children. The problem is that most parents don't really have the wisdom and the insight to guide children wisely. You know, a lot of parents get triggered, they have their own issues, they project their own stuff onto the kids, they get mad at the kids, and the kids don't know why. So unfortunately that mechanism is not working like it should, because parents are full of fear and full of limiting patterns and dysfunction. So unfortunately that means that seeking approval of parents has often meant being damaged. But that's not because of the process of seeking approval, it's more because of the state of the people who are parents. So that's just a little aside. But so in the same way that you were seeking approval from parents, and then one day you had just had to grow out of that and stop looking for the approval of the parents and find your own self and individualize, be your own person and grow to live your own life. Unfortunately, some people live their whole life and not let go of seeking approval from their parents, even sometimes their dead parents, you know. And how many of you have experienced that? You've had realizations over the last few years that unconsciously you were still looking for mom's approval or dad's approval, even though you know, you hardly see them, or one of them might be dead, and because it's still inscribed and you haven't really cleared that, you haven't properly matured and individualized so that you're living your own life and seeking no one's approval, not even your own. Certainly, you know, your own opinion, the opinion of the ego, doesn't matter any more than anyone else's opinion. So that needs to happen as a human being, the same as a soul, you got to go to the point where you individualize and go through that teenage crisis where you find yourself and you no longer want the approval or fitting the expectations of the hierarchy. And that's the point where many of you are at. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah, can you guys relate to that and feel that? Yeah? No? There's some of you that haven't really been, not many, like really most of you, that what I've just spoken of, that's the case for you, but there's a very few that have not really been heavily involved with the hierarchy for a long time. Not necessarily by choice though, because sometimes what happened is that you were one of those that didn't fit the sheep crowd, and some pretty full-on rejection might have occurred from that, or maybe you kind of lost the plot and then you would judge as, that's it, he's gone to the bad side, he's gone to the dark side, he's a bad one. So kind of violent rejection can be experienced from that, and that's got its own marks and its own wounds from that. And even though you may have traveled the most solitary path and done your own thing for a long time, there's still at some point, even if it was several thousand years ago, some involvement with the hierarchy where you either aspired to be part of it or you didn't want to be part of it because you may have had judgment on it, or you were part of it and then something happened and you did something that they really judged or they couldn't live with and they just rejected you. And that can be another scenario. So it's not about imagining great stories and issues where there aren't any, but it's about feeling with your own self what resonates here, what's there really. And a lot of this stuff you've carried for many, many lifetimes. So you have to really just realize that it's not necessarily a conscious thing, it's something that will be really deep inside. There'll be part of you for so long that it's almost you think it's you. It's just some of these feelings and ideals and things you're aspiring to and trying to fit with. You've carried this for, hundreds of years, thousands of years. You don't even know that it's not you anymore. It's like you've been wearing the same clothes for 3,000 years, 4,000 years, 5,000 years. So you just think, oh, but these clothes are part of me, aren't they? Yeah? It's like my cat, when she wears her necklace for a collar for a really, really long time, you take it off and she's like, you've taken off my neck. Yeah, it's a bit like that. And we need to be able to grieve, because there's a big letting go, there's a big turning of the page, there's something that's passing on today. So, if you need to grieve, remember the good times, then do that. If you need to kind of realize the damage that you may have incurred, then feel and realize that. And I know it may not be easy to just go, wow, I was really just trying to be my best, I was trying to serve, I was just really open my heart and aspired to be the best little servant that I could, and then look what's happened to me. I've been, burnt and hung and beaten and stoned and kept small and told to play small and stay in my place. And I've been trying to fit into that box of being something or someone or an ideal that denied the whole part of me. So feeling into any connections you've had to religious past. You don't have to know the stories, the who, the what, the where. It's about the feelings. What we want is access the feelings. For a long time, your relationship with God meant your relationship with the hierarchy was synonymous. And that's also a misconception. So when you were trying to get God's love and God's approval, or trying to hide your shameful bits from God because that was not good enough for God to see, or you had to beat that part of you down into submission because that was not good enough for God, all that stuff, it was really with the hierarchy. It had nothing to do with God. And you have to really realize that. A lot of people have issues with the word God or the concept of God. Well, that's actually issues with the hierarchy, not God.